Namaste. This is Yoga Therapy Podcast, and I'm your host, Shira Khan, yoga teacher, yoga therapist, and Ayurvedic wellness educator. In these conversations with experts in the field of yoga therapy, you'll find out what it is and how it can help you and your loved ones to reclaim well-being. We'll touch on physical as well as mental health, physiology, emotions, women's health, spiritual well-being, goddesses, and self-development in the fullest sense. Listening to another story can change ours, so thank you for showing up, and let's begin this journey together. So hello everyone, today we are joined by Amy Jarvis, and she is a yoga therapist. Woohoo! And certified yoga therapist and yoga teacher. So welcome, Amy. Thank you for being here. It's so wonderful to have you on. And we've just been chatting, getting to know each other a little bit. She's an amazing woman and she has a lot of ideas. Yeah, you're full of ideas. So please let us know how you got to yoga therapy. What was your journey? When did yoga start for you and how did it evolve? Ooh. And why is yoga therapy different to yoga?
So yoga was always in my life, even through school. But more specifically, it came back into my life when I was working full time. So my first degree is actually I have a bachelor's degree in construction management. Wow. I actually worked heavy construction, worked for large commercial companies all around the world. Wow. In the US and in the UK. Mm-hmm. And I was working on a job in a small town in West Virginia. And I recognized that I had this ability to hold stress really well. And I didn't know it. And I think, but long story short, I remember there was a small college there. And they had a drama department, and I always thought it would be really interesting from a construction standpoint to build sets and things like that. So I went over there for the intention of meeting new people and volunteering my services to work in the theater department. But as I was walking through one of these college halls, I literally looked into a window and there was a yoga class going on, and this older woman was teaching, now that I know what it is, but she was teaching pranayama, and she was doing alternate nostril breathing. So I was seeing these people, holding their nose, and I'm thinking, how strange, but it was really intriguing, right? And I decided, I kind of waited till the class was done, and I went in and I introduced myself to this teacher, and I started taking her class. And there wasn't any particular reason. Like at that time, I didn't recognize that I was holding my stress as well as I was doing through my construction job. Mm-hmm. But it was through the process of the yoga and the breathing that I was able to recognize my emotions and how I was getting affected off of the mat, and then being able to understand how I could use those tools. And that was
in daily life.
Real start. Yeah, it was really the start. And I love learning new things. It was just so intriguing. It was something that the whole pranayama was so different. I always thought of yoga like most people do, that they were just the postures, right?
Can we just explain to listeners, because they might not know what pranayama is?
Oh, absolutely. So yeah. Prana means energy, breath. Pranayama is actually, it means breath control. And so when you breathe, your vital self, your vital force, that's another translation of pranayama is vital force. Mm-hmm. And the air coming in and out of your body really regulates your emotional self.
Your physiology.
We may not realize it, even if you don't have awareness of it, it's still happening, mm-hmm. right? So the breath practices really started my journey. And I liked the stretching, the postures, but it was really the breath. So in construction, and I was single at the time, my biggest asset is I would go anywhere the company wanted me to go. And because I love the adventure, I love traveling. So I've lived in a lot of different places. But ever since that small town in West Virginia, every place I went, I found a studio.
Wow.
And that continued until I actually came to Washington State. And I found the studio, and I found my teacher and my mentor at the time. And at that point, I was married, but I didn't have children, and I had a good job. So I had money and time, which was such
Wonderful.
a blessing, right?
Yes.
Such a blessing, because that's not it right now. But it was a blessing in the sense that it gave me the opportunity to really find even more out about the yoga. And my mentor was I would like to say I learned a whole lot from her, because it's a process. It's part of a journey. You can't just dump everything onto somebody.
No.
And so, but before I realized it, I was in my first training. And it was like, how did I even get here?
Yeah, I had the same experience.
Because the more I didn't know, the more I wanted to know. And then it was just, for me, it was more of an educational. And then when my husband and I decided that we wanted to have kids, I also realized that I couldn't work in construction and be a full-time mom. I really had to choose. The construction doesn't really allow you to, not in an easy way, to be part-time. You can't really run a job part-time. It really doesn't work that way.
But and you loved your job.
Oh, I did. I loved it. I would never change that journey. I love working in construction. I loved seeing things come up from the ground. Can I
ask, where were you holding tension? Was it in certain parts of the body, or particular, or just all over the body?
I think it was really in my heart chakra.
Okay.
It was really in my chest.
The belly, maybe?
Maybe a little bit, for sure. But what I realized is I was so focused on my career that, which I wouldn't say is a bad thing, but what was happening was I didn't realize I wasn't allowing other doors, other people to come into my heart center.
Mm-hmm.
And when I learned how to breathe and how to release and to open, right, to stand tall through my breath, and start understanding how breath moves in different ways. It can move up and down, in a spiral, in a circle. It radiates differently. It could go beyond the parameter of your body, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's how my journey started, was with breath.
Yeah.
And which is, I think, a little different, because I think most journeys start off with movement, with postures.
Yeah, I think, most people, for me, it was definitely the movement aspect. I also had a lot of holding, but it was more emotional. And to do the postures gave me control over that physiology. And that settled my anxiety, and that helped me uplift my depression. So it was a self-regulating, unconscious self-regulating I was doing. But then when I had my first teacher training, I had this amazing woman, Rose Bowden. She's now, I think, 70 years old. She was already 60 something at that stage. And she'd been to India since she was 20, following gurus and living in caves, really doing the full hippie meditation. And she taught us how to breathe, and she taught us meditation, and you would go really deep, because she'd also done more than 22 vipassanas, so these 10-day meditation retreats. And you would sit with her, and she would just take you straight in, like, because her consciousness was so expanded, it helped you go into that state very quickly. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that changed the whole trajectory of what yoga is.
Well, it is now, because I think in a whole, especially I could say where I live, or even generally in the US, people are really starting to recognize beyond the movement.
Yeah.
They're really starting to recognize the whole, we had this real wave of mindfulness practice, and people call it a lot of different things. Noting is one way that they name it. And I find I think it's actually pretty cool. Like initially I as a real like purist, I'm like, oh, just call it what it is. But at the end of the day, it's like,
doesn't matter what people call it as long as they get there.
Exactly. Like if that's their way in, call it whatever you want.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why, and
I used to do that too. I used to be like, but this is yoga, guys. This is the aspect of yoga. Yoga is much bigger than mindfulness or whatever it is.
Right. And it's like,
or
I was listening to a meditation with my husband, and I so wanted to interrupt and go, oh my gosh, this is what they're doing. Like, but I'm like, don't just be quiet. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So, so my journey really, it started off with a 500-hour teacher training, and it was more of the Vinny yoga style. So Vinny means adaptive. So we didn't learn to teach routines. We learned proper sequencing, right? In relationship to the spine. Like I wouldn't really take somebody from a lateral to a twist, because that could really be physically harmful for the spine if somebody is not very familiar with their body, because especially when you have a new person moving, right? They want to do what the other person is doing sometimes. And, so I really do work. When I do adapt to who comes into my room, I still have a proper type of framework per se. Right. I mean, I'm always going to begin with a form of a forward bend. But there's so many different ways that you could do a forward bend.
Yeah.
Even, right?
Cat cow.
Cat cow.
Yeah. Something soft and gentle.
I mean, even in my class, on their back, doing a pelvic tilt is a form of a forward bend.
Yeah.
Right. So, so because of that, so then I did this, we decided to have kids, or we have one child, and I wanted to stay home. I really wanted to stay home. I wanted to experience that. And I thought, well, I'll get this 500. And honestly, at that time, I'm thinking, how cool would this be? I could go teach a yoga class and still kind of stay in that world and still be a mom, not realizing what was kind of happening behind the scenes, like my trajectory of going like I am now. I didn't really see that happening back then. It was more of my way of staying in touch with people in the real world.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
So that's how it started. But then I realized I did a lot of pro bono work, or a lot of assisting with a yoga therapist. And I really just watched. And what I really liked was that it wasn't about doing a class. It wasn't just somebody coming in and ticking off that they did a yoga class. It was really about healing. It was really about, this was them giving them their selves time to go in and really self-heal. And it could be healing from a very anamaya, a very body layer. Maybe I have a lot of clients that come to me through physical therapists. Their physical therapy is now done, but they've only worked on the shoulder, but now their corresponding hip is hurting, and so they come to really figure out, well, I still need to move, and I need to move properly, and I'm trying to figure all that out. So that's how I start with them, right? And I start, oozing in how it's all connected. But when I saw this other yoga therapist really working, it took my practice up a level. Like, again, it wasn't just flying into a studio, teaching a class and leaving. It was coming into a studio, really creating relationship with these people, understanding their story, and just being
their
present
needs
with their story.
I think also understanding their needs. Like, you come in and you look at people and you ask questions until you realize what are they actually needing, maybe that they don't even know.
Sometimes they know.
Yeah.
Yep. Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't know.
Yeah.
And that started a different type of teaching for me.
Yeah. And an inquiry, I think also. You start to inquire different.
Right. I mean, it's like, gosh, you watch somebody move and you could have everybody doing the same movement, but it's a little different with everybody. And it's not that any one of them is doing it wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just their body. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just really started paying attention to that. And I just really liked the energy of that energy of the therapeutic class was just so different from more of a traditional hatha class.
Less competition.
Less competition. Yeah, and I could go into that because I really took that into how I teach now. Mm-hmm. So when I realized I was going to stay home really more full time and really not go back into construction like I was before, I thought, I want to make this more of a career choice. And so that's when I decided to go back to school and get the therapeutic certification.
Great. Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah. So a long story to a really short question, but that was...
Yeah, but it was a loaded question.
Yeah.
And there were three questions. Yeah, no, okay, beautiful. Yeah, and so you take that now to the groups as well. You find it easy to teach that in groups, to assess these different people?
I do, because my intention is I want each person to leave the class thinking the whole thing was designed therapeutically just for them.
Yeah.
And I've actually had those comments after class, like, wow, I mean, I've had people come to the side to me and go, gosh, Amy, you didn't have to do everything that I wanted. And I'm thinking, I really didn't. And what I came to realize is that the tools in my, toolbox can really relate to everyone, and it doesn't really matter totally where they are. When I teach, I typically do have them come to their back. It's really unusual for me to have them starting standing, maybe sitting and breathing, but to the most part, I would say 90% of the time they start on their back.
Okay.
And even online, the way that I teach is I do not do the movement.
Okay, you just
when they're on their back or on their stomach. Now, if I have a new student, I'll actually say, if you have any questions, I'm actually doing the movement right now. Mm-hmm. And I do take them through it physically, like, mm-hmm. how, right? But that was one part that really changed from my 500 to my therapeutic, where it really, even though I was still kind of doing the Vinny adapting in the 500, the therapeutic took it up a level for me where I had to, this was totally about them. One of the outside of them, I will actually say, when you come to my class, you'll even hear me say it, while you're on your back or your stomach, I'm not doing the movement. So don't even look at the screen. I want you to listen to me as if it's a podcast, right? Or just a recording in a certain sense.
Yeah.
Just listen to my words.
So they stay internalized.
And just stay, and that's where I really work on keeping them there. I have them do a lot of self-inquiry of checking in and where they're at, or the relationship between their back body and the floor. And, there's just many different ways to do it, right? And I realized that I do that actually in person too. So even in the studio, one thing that I do, which is a little different, I haven't really seen any other yoga teachers do this. I do not use a mat.
Okay.
And I don't use the mat for a very specific reason. I walk around a little bit, and sometimes I even go to the side because I don't want it about me.
Mm.
I really want to emphasize that they're in their space.
Mm-hmm.
And, now that's not to say if they need to see a movement, of course I'm going to demonstrate and do it.
Yeah.
Right. And if they are standing and we're doing like some warrior, I'm probably doing it. If I'm standing, they see me and they're not struggling to see me, I'll probably do it. But if they're on their belly doing shalabhasana, like a cobra pose, I don't want them to have to crack their neck to try to see what I'm doing. Right?
No, of course. And I think it's also different. I've noticed this from my own teaching as therapy, or when I do more therapeutic with groups. If they're on their back and on their bellies, I want to see what they're doing.
Exactly.
So I can talk them through and gently guide them into a more healthy state for their body or their mind or the physiology.
Right.
Yeah.
And most of the time, that person probably thinks that I'm talking to them, but I may be specifically looking at somebody in particular, right? Saying, now drop those shoulder blades down the back or something, but everybody takes that in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But like you just said, you get your cues also from what they're doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You have to.
And
not just mentally ticking off a list.
Right. And I think that's what really creates a really good teacher, and not necessarily a therapeutic teacher, but any teacher. If they, like, I do teach a 200-hour teacher training course. I'm a certified school, and I would literally have my teacher students literally sit on their hands and teach a class.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because you need to learn how to not only verbalize, but you need to be able to understand what you're seeing. And that is a skill that once you get it, it's going to make you a better teacher.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's a great idea. See, I told you were creative. Very creative. That is a wonderful way.
Hands, man, they just want to go.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, well, and the whole thing, I know here there's been a lot of discussion about touch, right? Touching people. And I even, in my training, we actually specifically talked about touch and how to touch, and how some touch, you just don't want to sometimes be light because it kind of may feel weird, right? Yeah. You want to be very positive in what you're doing and solid. And and sometimes people, it's like a handshake, right? You want a nice firm handshake. And when you get that limpy one, you're like, that just kind of feels weird, right? And then there's some schools where they're just like, no touch. And I'm like, both are okay, but you need to be able to know how to do it. You know what I mean? If you're going to touch, know how to do it, have the confidence, understand why you're touching a certain part of the body. Not just because, right? Yeah. But then at the same time, that whole verbal direction, such an important skill that's one of my biggest goals when I teach my teachers. Yeah. But before they leave, they have to be able to do a whole class on their hands, sitting on their hands.
I'm going to try that next time. I've never done it. It's I'm sure it's very challenging because I like to use my hands to express myself. Very Italian French kind of.
I understand that.
Yeah. Okay.
I understand that.
Yeah, great. So tell us how you do a class. How do you help people, and what do people come in with?
Oh my gosh.
Everything.
You name it, I've gotten it.
Okay.
I mean, literally, I will have individuals who can't be on their front body. I have individuals who can't sit. I have individuals, I've had people come in with broken limbs.
Oh, wow.
But the regular kind of, I have, the arthritis, the whole age, a lot of stress, a lot of mental, like, how do I slow this train down? That would probably be the majority.
And so you have this whole group of different issues all together in the same class.
All together. It's funny because sometimes I'll joke because somebody will say, I'm still working with my rotary cuff, I'm still working with the shoulder, and then two people down the line will go, oh, I'm still working with my shoulder, and I'll laugh and I will say, I'll go, I'm so thankful that y'all are coordinating with each other. Right? So the elements are not terribly unique. I have the majority of my clients, they're 65 and older. They don't like to be on their knees.
No.
You know what? So I just don't take them on their knees. Yeah. Or if we do, I'm very conscious of how long we're there. I have them use their blankets. I prep them for it.
Yeah.
So again, but then there's times when a slew of people will come in and they're really capable, and I'm like, all right, let's do this.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
We could add a little bit more.
Yeah. Even with the people who have trouble on their knees and everything, you spice it up for them.
No, but like if I know, because you get to know your clients over a period of time, right? Yeah. And if I know that there's really no knee problems, then that would be the day maybe we do a little bit more where they're balancing on that one knee, like bird dog, where, opposite arm to leg, that kind of thing.
Wow, that's pretty challenging.
Yeah, it's but
it's good.
They're up for it.
Yeah, and it's good for them to feel that they can do that. I just wanted to ask one thing. Do you do an intake with each individual before, or you just get to know them through these group yoga therapy classes?
I do have an intake form, and I do privates. And when I do the privates, I definitely do the intake form.
Yeah. But not if they're coming into this group class. They don't need to.
No, but what I will do is I'll explain to them how this class is different, especially online. I'll explain to them, hey, I don't do routines, so whatever you tell me is really helpful, and it's going to help guide me on kind of not what to do. And I'll say, I'm going to go and we're going to just do a basic check-in with the others, and I'll come to you last so you can kind of get an idea of what people are saying and whatnot.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Because a lot of times they'll say, oh, whatever. And I'm like, oh,
no way.
Yeah. And then the other students will pipe in and go, oh, wait a minute, let's really focus on that, because they'll know that, right?
Yeah. And then this new person goes, oh, I do have something.
Right? It's like, and or somebody will go, well, I really want to engage more with my abdominals. And I'm like, really? You do? And everybody else
sure?
like, and then I'll work, and I'll work with the prana, and we'll work with really creating some heat, right? And I'll progressively get them there, really working their abdominals. So from a breath level, from a mechanical engagement level, and then I'll take them into that plank.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? And really go, okay, now this is when you want to use that heat.
Yeah.
I want you to really imagine now, press through those heels, press those toes into the floor, press up through the palms of the hands, drop those shoulders down, create the length between the ears and the shoulders. Now exhale really strongly as if you're going to flatten that low back to the ceiling. You've got this. You feel that? You feel the heat? You feel the strength?
So you're coaching
I want
them.
you to rename it. So I'll have them rename it. It's like, this isn't pain. This is change happening right now. And you're feeling this sensation of heat and strength. This is change. So let's stay here for one more breath. And I my voice, right? I'm not going to say, okay, now draw your abdominals in. Like, I'm not going to, Like, do you know what I mean?
I know. It's funny when I listen to myself on a recording, I go really up in the peak phase of the class, like strong voice. And then at the end, it's very soft and calm.
Well, and a good teacher knows how to do that, right? Because you have to help them with that whole prana, that whole energy, right?
Yeah.
And but then we'll get down and I'll say, if you want to drop to your knees, that's totally fine, but continue creating that heat through the abdominals. And then I'll slowly have them bend their elbows down through like Shangaranga, right? And come onto the floor. And I'm like, now just go ahead and melt into the floor. What does that feel like to really release? And maybe I'll do a really quick rotation of consciousness to help them to release, and then I'll have them and they'll feel all good. And I'll go, now, I just want to remind you, it was, sometimes, and depending upon who's in the class again, because a lot of these ladies know each other really well. Or during and they're really working, you could tell and go, well, Lori's the one that really wanted to work the abs. And somebody would be like, oh, Lori, so we really get in this.
It's very playful.
Very playful.
That's
and
good. But that's because you set the tone and you've got this playful, fun.
Yeah. And attitude. At the end, they're just so grateful, right? They're like, and if she could do it, I could do it. And it's not even that competitiveness anymore. They just, and again, these bodies are 65, 75. I have an 85. I'm like 85 doing plank. I'm like, I want to be you.
Yeah. That's inspirational.
It is inspirational. And so, I see another 50-year-old like me and I'm like, I want to do that. Right? There's no reason why I can't do that. It's just, do I want to do it? Do I want to put my mindset to it? Is it part of my journey to do that? But yeah, so in the class, I have found it doesn't really matter that I'm dealing with maybe, or somebody mentions a shoulder or a knee or the ritties in the brain want to, I just need to slow down. I do base it a little bit on the time of the class. I'm a morning class, although I have somebody from England that comes in. So my 9 o'clock is her 4 o'clock. So like if you came in, it would be 6 o'clock, right? So I would say, okay, we're morning here, so we're going to focus a little bit on inhale, but however, I'm going to have you focus more on exhale. So I will actually do that even online.
Great.
And right. And so, and I typically go through, not verbally normally, but in my mind, in the back, I go through the koshas, I take them through the different layers.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, everybody needs that.
And I think they all get it as well, even if it's not consciously. Yeah. And they need it.
Or I'll lead them, not specifically, but have them specifically lead their breath. Meaning, so if it was your right shoulder that you're wanting to bring some TLC to, I want you to, as if you could literally breathe into your right shoulder, I want you to lead that energy there. If it's the left hip or the right toe, whatever that is, I want you to direct. So I don't have to be specific. I just kind of give them an outline to kind of follow, but they'll go where they need to go.
Yeah.
And I think that's how the adapting really works.
And
how when people come out of it, they're like, gosh, she did that whole thing for me. Absolutely.
Yeah, because you gave it back to them at the end, and that means they can direct that feeling of goodness into whatever part of their body that needs it. So it becomes personalized. Yeah. I had a really great teacher in the yoga therapy training, South Flynn in Australia, and she said something really wonderful that I try and repeat in most classes. So at the end of whatever we were doing, and usually at the end of the class, I'll say, if there was anything beneficial during the practice, I want you to bring this back from your memory and just soak it in, absorb it, feel it and strengthen that pathway to it. And so this, when she said this, that kind of blew my mind. It was like, oh yeah, we can do that too. Because we so quickly go to the negative side. Okay, exactly. I have a pain, or I'm tired now.
Well, and what I like to do, I love doing comparison, because I think it's a great way to dip in and add to your intuitive wisdom bank. And, you know, and I do a lot of different comparisons. Let's say if I don't do things asymmetrically, like we work on just one side, right? And then just feel the difference between the left shoulder and the right shoulder. And can you name it? And it, you know, meaning, does it feel more open, spacious? Just and just name it. You don't have to, there's no judgment, just recognize that there's a change, right?
Yeah.
And then, but then I'll add, you created that change. You did that. Right?
Yeah.
And then I'll take it to the bigger level and go, and I'll introduce in the beginning of the class of just going, okay, we're welcoming ourselves to your space. Just notice where you're coming in from. Just notice how you feel generally right now. Can you name it? Maybe you feel dizzy. Maybe the cells in your body are still kind of moving around too much. You know, again, I like saying name it. Yeah. And then at the very end, I'll say, would you use the same word? How is it different? Now, if it's the same word, is it in a different font? Like, so maybe it's not as bold, but maybe it's in a script.
Yeah.
You know, so the changes can be subtle, and that's okay. But a lot of times from the beginning to the end, you know, after a shavasana, it's a big difference.
Yeah.
And like your teacher taught you, it's like you want to, that was the whole point of coming.
Yeah.
The whole point of yoga is transformation.
Yeah.
So you want to draw in and go, there it is, right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have
identify and stay with it, because I think even when we have those experiences in our practice, we're so quickly moving on to the next pose or the next practice or the next breathing technique that we don't just stay with what was at that moment to fully absorb.
Yeah. And it's, you know, one of the comments that I get a lot, the hardest thing about my class is that it's slow. Because you have to teach people how to be slow.
Yeah, I do the same. I think a lot of people, the younger people, I do this open class and I get a lot of people flowing in. And I notice some of them find it irritating because I focus a lot on first slowing down, first checking into your body and your mind and all the other layers. And then we're going to move that and start to integrate that and start to warm it up and start to mash it up. And then we can start into strengthening, but first we've got to get everything flowing.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's like life, right? You don't really know what's going to happen tomorrow, but we've had to, you know, you could set yourself as you can, right? For anticipation or, and which is wise, right? But yoga is when you don't have a routine, you're really just letting that person lead you. And for me, that's really comforting, because that's why I like taking yoga myself, because I just want to be led. But sometimes people, like you said, they're just like, well, what's the next thing? Where are we going to go next?
Yeah.
And that is the cycle that I'm like, no, just relax in the moment. Can you relax in the moment? Can you release in the moment and be present? And what does that look like? And it's hard. I think that's probably the hardest part of the practice. I think if I had them doing headstand, it would be easier.
Yeah, because it takes a lot of conscious effort to not go to the next thing. Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
So wonderful work, Amy. Did you want to share a practice with us? Something for the listeners?
Sure, man. You know, one of the things that I do is I do yoga nidra. I do my yoga nidra. Sometimes I'll read, and I write a lot of my own nidras, But the majority of the time, I actually go a little rogue. I kind of just do my own thing. I know the pattern, right? And I find, again, if I try too hard, it almost sounds too hard. So I really enjoy just kind of doing it from the fly.
Yeah, I do the same.
So
it's too hard to do it the same.
So why don't we just do a really short sitting, just coming to a comfortable seated posture. You could, if you have both feet, if you can, onto the floor. You have a soft gaze, or I welcome anyone to, the dogs next door have just come out, of course.
Don't worry.
So funny. That's actually a really good segue into, let's do a Pratyahara practice. Okay. So Pratyahara is the practice of withdrawal, the practice of letting go of all of those things outside that's happening that don't have anything to do with what you're doing right now. So come to sit tall through the crown of your head. You could rest your hands on your lap, palms up or palms down. Have a soft gaze or close those eyes. And just notice your sitting posture initially. Are your hips square? Do you feel that you have as much of an equal weight down through your sit bones? Notice your jaw. Now notice the shoulders in relationship to the weight of your arms. Can you really allow the weight of the arms to drop into your lap? You could draw your shoulder blades slightly together, but don't overwork them. And now come to physically feel the temperature of the air coming in and out of your nose. Have this awareness that the temperature going in is slightly different from the temperature releasing from the body. It could even potentially sound slightly different. Now we're very passive in your breathing. And I don't want you to work the breath in any particular direction, one harder than the other. But what I would like you to do is, can you actually slow it down? Imagine that you're sipping water through a straw and you're controlling the liquid coming up through the straw very slowly. So in that same mindset, when you're inhaling the air through both of your nostrils, do so slowly, and you could kind of just almost visualize and see the air coming in. And simultaneously, you're also feeling the sensation of your lungs expand. And you can be a little bit more active if you have that inhale right now. You could even physically press out into the ribs. And then do the same on the exhale. You can draw your abdominals in slightly, but really monitor and watch very slowly now the decrease happening in the physical body. You could almost feel a sense of a little bit of pressure happening, or release of pressure through the lungs as the air comes back out. And now I'm going to take you through a very short rotation of consciousness. So staying with your nice, slow and steady breath. As I name different parts of your body, bring your mind's eye to that part of the body and just notice its orientation, its placement. So just notice your right hand. Just notice what parts of your right hand are touching your leg, your lap. Notice the fingers of your right hand and your right thumb. Notice the natural curvature of them. Notice that they're not likely to be very straight or curled in. Just this natural bend of the fingers and the thumb. Now staying on the right side, notice the right wrist, lower arm, elbow, shoulder, that whole right arm and hand. Now as you exhale, imagine the full exhale going down through the right shoulder, down through the upper arm, lower arm, and it comes to sit in your right palm. Now you may even feel the sensation of that right side being heavier. And now let's come to the left palm, the left hand. Notice the orientation of the left hand, how it's placed, what it's touching. Notice the natural curvature of your forefingers and thumb. Allow the full weight of the arm to release down through that hand into the leg. The left wrist, lower arm, elbow, upper arm, and shoulder. That whole left arm and hand. Allow the full weight from the shoulder down through the hand to release into your lap. And now on that next exhale, slide that exhale down the left arm and let it sit in the left palm. Now notice the right collarbone, the left collarbone, the center of your chest. Come to inhale and exhale and draw that vital force into the center of your chest. Now glide that inhale up beyond the crown of your head. And as you exhale, draw it down into the center of the chest and allow it to cascade all the way down into both palms. The shoulders, the arms, the hands, your sit bones and your legs are completely released, but holding you strong up through the crown of the head. And now come to your face. Notice the forehead, the space between the eyes, the bridge of your nose, the tip of your nose, the upper lip, lower lip, and chin, your jaw, your tongue, your right cheek, left cheek, right eyelid, left eyelid, right eye, left eye, right eyebrow, left eyebrow. The whole face is relaxed. All the lines, all the laughter lines and the joy lines are joyful, yet smooth, as if they're hanging in a hammock. Now imagine the whole body released in a hammock. From the back of the head, the neck, upper back, low back, the back of the legs, the whole body feels relaxed. Imagine slowly moving from side to side in a hammock. Feel the breeze right across the face. Feel that coolness. And with that coolness, you begin to come back and awaken. So bringing a little bit more focus back to the inhale. Inhale slowly and deeply. Press out through the ribs. Exhale deeply down so you feel rooted. And then slowly, you can open your eyes just for a moment. Take everything in, see the different colors, and then close the eyes again. So you have this awareness that you're in a physical space and you know the space, but then you could go back inward to anywhere you want to go. And then when you're ready to come back fully, opening your eyes, bringing your palms together into your heart center. Namaste.
Thank you. That was delicious.
Thank you.
So, yeah, it was really like, especially that hammock that around the legs and the back body. I was like, oh, and then you said you can now open your eyes. I was like, no, I'm gonna stay there. Yeah.
It's like at the end of Shavasana. It's like I hear, like, I remember attending one class and she would do the chime, and that was the kind of the indication that Shavasana was ending. And I'm like, no.
Just when you relaxed. Takes a
like
long
the
time.
Yeah, it's like getting at the end of the massage that you had, and you're like, can you just start over again? Like I'm
finally feeling it. Yeah, there's so much resistance in the beginning. Yeah. Thank you.
So I love doing that.
Yeah, I love it too. And my students love that part of the class too, because I do challenge them in a gentle way. But yeah.
You know, when I do ask, you know, how they'd like to feel in their body, is there any postures in particular that they would like to work at or figure out or have time in, and I laugh when they say Shavasana. And I'm like, okay. And there actually has been time when technically it's an asana class, like it's a movement class.
Yeah.
It will become a meditation Shavasana class. You know,
like you do two poses just to get into Shavasana.
Exactly. let's just do a little cat-cow, some Apanasana, maybe some, you know, Shalabhasana. Let's do some low back wellness, and then I'll put you down.
Especially in the winter, you notice people just want that. Amy, is there anything you want to leave people with? You'd like to tell them about your wonderful work and your retreats, your workshops?
Well, I love teaching, and anyone would be welcome to any of my classes online. You know, they could find me at enlivenhere.yoga. You know, I do advanced studies, and I'm working on creating modules. So they're open for students, but then they're open for students who want to become teachers as well. Great. And I love doing that. I'll be doing a retreat in about a week and a half. I do have one spot left. One never knows. Right? You just never know. No. I'll be doing another one in 2022. But yeah, just come and find me online and meet the Sangha. It's just so incredible. All the women, you know, it's just, I could sell myself, but I think that people they come because, not only because of me, but mostly because of the relationships that they create and the time that they get to spend with those others with the same mindset and the same similar goals. You know, we're all living on the same earth, and we're more similar than different. And knowing that and being part of it. I got one too, it doesn't matter. I'm actually really impressed mine hasn't come in yet.
How old is yours?
My son is 12.
Okay, this lovely daughter of mine, she's 10, about to turn 11.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right age. She did exactly what she's supposed to be doing right now.
Barging in.
Barging in because she loves mom, and mom's always welcoming.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's all I would say, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I mean, I guess it does matter what class you go to, get to know your teachers, understand their background, their lineage, because I think that yoga and yoga education is so broad.
Yeah. I think it's important for people to realize that they have a choice. If it doesn't click or feel good, then try something else.
And then try something else, right? Yeah. And I'm certainly not the end all, I mean,
no one is.
I think that's the beauty of the fact that I think what I do is a really pure yoga, right? But at the end of the day, I think that there's all these different variations of yoga out there because we all are so different and we need things at different times in our life, right? And I would just say, do it as an adventure. Explore it. At the you'll know if it fits well for you or not, right? And I really do believe that. Yeah, I mean, I really do believe, right now, those that show up in my Zoom room are the ones that are supposed to be there. I mean, I've been in situations where even in a live class, only 2 students come. And for me, it's a blessing. It's like, for one reason or another, it was just supposed to be the 3 of us. Yeah. How wonderful is that? Yeah. And it really creates, and because of that, they feel even more special, right? And they should, right?
Well, I think it's also that aspect of intimacy and therefore safety. And that in itself is a huge healing process. Just being heard and seen and felt fully.
Yep. And now with so much online, you're not, you're just not destined to have to experience something in your village, in your city. You could really, if you're open to the experience online, you could go anywhere. And meet anybody. I mean, look at us, right?
Yeah, it's true. That's right. Yeah. So. Thank you for that wisdom, Amy. You've totally humbled me.
Oh, right.
Yes.
I can't wait to do one of your classes.
Okay. So we'll end here, and I'll put everything in the show notes, all your work and links. Yeah, and we'll say goodbye to our listeners. Bye-bye. Bye. So thank you for listening all the way to the end of the podcast. For those of you who don't know, I've also got a Facebook group. It's called Yoga for Emotional Empowerment and Health. So it's all about learning different tools for different emotions and understanding them in relation to Ayurvedic elements and principles. So you can really quickly self-regulate yourself. So weekly I do a live for 10, 15 to 20 minutes where I explain about different emotions, also anxiety and depression. So please join there, and I will put a link to the Facebook group in the notes. Website, I also have a lot of blogs and articles, resources that you can download, PDFs, which will help you deal better with emotional life and turn those emotions from a sea of emotions which you feel totally out of control in, to actually transforming your life and feeling empowered, feeling that you are alive and passionate and that you understand what emotions are trying to tell you and how you can move with them rather than against them or suppressing them. Okay, much love to you and be well. See you next week, or hear from me next week in any case. Bye.